After covering 3 of the 4 teams in Pool A of the 2021 European Hockey Championships, it's finally Spain's turn to get its own preview. Runners-up in 2019, Spain is taking what many would consider an old squad to this year's tournament. The majority of players that won silver in 2019 also made this year's squad, but repeating that feat is a big ask. This is without doubt the last European Championships tournament for a few players and their coach, Fred Soyer, who will be replaced by Max Caldas after the Olympics. So, who are these players? What do they bring to the table? And most importantly, what can we expect from Spain at the 2021 Euro Hockey Championship? Let's immediately start with the outgoing players. David Allegri, Pau Quemada, Mikel Delas and Kiko Cortés are 37 or older, and Max Sayas might also be playing his last tournament, as he's coming to the latter stages of his illustrious career. Some have already announced their pending retirement, but we can speculate on the others' future. They'll bring a combined 1,363 caps of international experience to this tournament, and the Aztecs will want to send them out on a high, but they can't afford to lose sight of the bigger picture, which is ultimately to win. By now, everyone knows the tough group Spain will be in, but recent Pro League games have shown that Spain is capable of beating their opponents. Yes, they beat GB rather than England, but it's a good sign nonetheless. However, Spain has some issues, especially at the back. Offensively, they possess genuine talent and great threats in the form of Bolto, Quemada, Gonzalez and Leonard, but Spain often gets outscored by their opponents. Their form is very fluctuant, but they haven't been bad in their most recent games, and that bodes well for the tournament. Though they did lose one game to Team GB, they also beat them in another after penalty strokes, which they'll take confidence from. Their toughest opponents in the group phases will be Belgium, and a good result against Belgium might very well mean qualification for the semi-finals. It would be surprising should Spain fail to defeat Russia, but only 3 points won't be enough to qualify for the next round. With their clash against England being the last game of the group stages, qualification could come down to the result against Belgium. Should England and Spain draw, it's likely that their result against Belgium matters. England and Spain will need a high-scoring result against Russia, but more importantly, they'll need favourable results against Belgium. Evidently, getting the win over Belgium won't be easy at all, but even a loss could be enough, so long as it isn't a demolition. Spain's 2 games against Belgium in February have shown that Spain's ability to beat Belgium's scoring output is there, but both games still ended up being defeats. Still, a stroke of luck is never far away. Spain often plays a high-pressure game, which obviously facilitates a transition from defense to attack when they get the ball, but it isn't without risk. The high pressure requires intensity, and it requires every Spanish player to move up the lines, which leads to significant gaps in behind the defense. These gaps are easily exploitable, and Spain has conceded from such positions in their recent games. They'll need more communication and better positional awareness if they are to achieve anything in this tournament. On the other hand, Spain plays an intelligent game in attack. They often split the pitch in 2 vertical halves and completely fill the half on which the ball is, which creates enormous gaps on the other side if they successfully manage to get the ball there. They also like distributing the ball into the offensive 23 via the sidelines, which they then often quickly deflect or redistribute to the inside with 1 or 2 quick touches. That creates gaps to run into the D or to find someone whose positioning is more favourable, and that's shown in their first game against GB in May. It does lead to goals. But what about the players as individuals? Is there someone who can make the difference? Is there an X factor in the Spanish team? Absolutely. And absolutely. Pau Quemada, despite being very close to turning 38, remains one of the deadliest penalty corner specialists. Pepe Romeu is a very capable backup, but Spain doesn't especially rely on one player. Xavi Leonard is by far the most talented player, but he does have that occasional game where he perhaps should be slightly more impactful. However, much like Belgium, the goals come from a variety of different players. Marc Bolto is rapid, and his ability to wangle his way through gaps and defenses is very reminiscent of Pau Quemada in his prime. Alvaro Iglesias is probably one of the most feared Spanish finishers, which is in part down to a great understanding of how to create small gaps and advantages for himself on the pitch. A little lower down the pitch, Max Sayas is one of the best midfield metronomes in the game today. His ability to speed up or slow down the play and to draw out opponents is unbelievably good, and his usefulness doesn't end there. A vocal leader, he's constantly redirecting his teammates, constantly spotting gaps or threats, and constantly communicating with the defense and the forwards. Despite being 34 years of age, is still one of, if not the most important player in the Spanish side. But he isn't the only good midfield player around. On the contrary, Ruiz and Torres are skilled, dynamic, and will run their socks off. Velas and Allegri are not in their prime anymore, but they are still excellent players, and the experience and knowledge they bring to the team looking for one last European medal is invaluable. I mentioned the defensive frailties, so it'll be interesting to see whether someone like Saez drops back into an even more defensively minded role when on the pitch. So, an aging but talented squad with some young guns such as Bastera, Porto, Torres and Alonso, is it a recipe for success? It could be, but a tough group and an extremely tough semi-final awaits if they do make it that far. From there on out, it's a guessing game. They could have a great tournament, but equally, they could absolutely have a stinker. It's a tough task to accurately predict the Spanish team, but if they do perform to the best of their abilities, we're in for a treat. They could make it into the semis, or even into the final.